Welcome back, everyone. I want to talk about how this week I was really inspired by a church testimony about someone who suffered from Bell's palsy and was unable to work for a while. And they spoke about how Jehovah Jireh, that was the name that he used for Jesus, was able to help, was able to provide for him in his time of need. This testimony made me contemplate of the many names of our Lord and Savior, and what we call him and why we do it. Because each name holds an individual truth for each of us. There are over 50 listed names for Jesus in the Bible. None are cited as more correct than the other. But each holds an individual truth as how we relate to him. I want to talk about why I call Jesus Jehovah Jireh. Like I said, there's no correct name. There's over 50 listed in the Bible. It depends on how you see Jesus, what he's done for you. So the testimony in church basically told why he sees him as the provider, Jehovah Jireh. Today I want to tell you why I see him as Jehovah Rapha, my healer. And no matter what name you choose, there's no incorrect name. The most popular in the Bible is Jesus. Just simply Jesus, which means God saves. But it wouldn't be surprising to any Jewish person to know that was not the original name listed in the Bible. The original name was Yeshua. But translated in English, it became Jesus. So if you're Hebrew, if you're Jewish, you relate to Jesus in his original Hebrew name as Yeshua. Yeshua. So like I say, each name is not better than the other, but it holds an individual truth for each of us. Now, let me give you my testimony why I see him as Jehovah Rapha, my healer. When I was first placed on campus at FAU, I was a little bit over 200 pounds, like maybe 240, 250. But as time went on, I started losing a lot of weight. By the time the month was over, I was 194. I lost so much weight, I didn't understand why. I continued losing weight throughout the time I was there. My friends took notice, and they thought I should go to the campus clinic because I was starting to show bones in this area. I have never shown bones on my body in my life. And they saw how weak I became. So they actually had to walk me to the campus clinic. The nurse on staff, when she took my test, gave me a blood test. She said, "Oh my God, we can't handle something like this here. You're in danger of going to a diabetic coma. We need to rush you to the hospital now." The way she reacted, I thought I was about to die. I had no idea what she was talking about as far as being diabetic. When they finally got me to the hospital, the physician there had a very similar reaction. I remember the encounter. He was like this. He said, "Oh my goodness, did we forget to take our insulin today?" And that's exactly the way he said it. Did we forget to take our insulin? I just laughed how he included himself in my trauma. Did we forget our insulin? He asked me, and I said, "I've never taken insulin." And then he became a little bit demeaning the way he reacted to me. He said, "Do you mean you expect me to believe that you've never been diagnosed with diabetes with sugar like this?" I said, "Sir, I've never taken insulin in my life. No, I've never been diagnosed. He said, well, I have some bad news for you. Not only are the worst diabetic that I've ever seen in 50 years, my sugar was approaching 2,000 apparently. It was over 1,500. He said, you could go into a diabetic coma. The bad news for you is you've probably been diabetic your whole life and just didn't know it. I thought about what he said for a moment, and then my life flashed before my eyes. Not in a death kind of way, but I started remembering things. I was awfully large when I was born. I was born a 10-pound baby boy from a mother that was barely 5 feet. She was 5'3", as a matter of fact. I was a giant baby. And later on in high school, I started gaining a lot of weight. By the time I started playing football, I was nearly 300 pounds. And then it all started to come together. It started making sense. The first symptom of diabetes is obesity. I was born obese. And by the time I got to high school, I grew to be about 300 pounds. So what he's saying is probably true. I was diabetic my whole life. I just didn't notice. And I was just relieved to know that I was diabetic and not dying, because this is what I said to my doctor after he said, I've been diabetic my whole life. I said, that's well and good, but am I dying? I didn't know what was going on with me. He said, why would you say something like that? I said, can you not see me? I forgot that he didn't know what I looked like beforehand. So he could only see me presently. He didn't know the transformation that got me to this way. So I said, can you not see? He said, what do you mean? What's wrong with you? I said, I've lost about 100 pounds in less than a month. And all my friends are nervous. And I'm super weak. He said, you're not dying. He said, you're a camel hump. What did you just call me? He said, you're a camel hump. This man insults me by denying that I didn't know that I was diabetic my whole life. Now he's calling me a camel hump. He could tell that I took offense to that. He said, no, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm trying to explain to you why you're losing so much weight. He said, are you familiar with the camel and how the humps work on a camel? I said, no, I'm a journalist. I'm not a zoologist. He said, the way camel humps work, the way a camel's able to survive in the desert, it survives off the fat stored in its humps. I believe the reason why you haven't fallen into a diabetic coma is because your body is feeding on the fat left in your body. You are surviving because your body is that camel hump. Your body's surviving on the fat stored in your body. That's why you're losing so much weight. And after a camel feeds on the fat, it disappears. It disappears and then it replenishes again. So you're disappearing like a camel hump. And I was. So my body was basically devouring itself to survive. And the fact that he told me that I was diabetic my whole life and didn't know it was a testament to how God was placing his hand over my life. Most diabetics will know if you don't take insulin for one day, if you're diabetic, you could fall into serious trouble and even be hospitalized. And that's just one day. But this man was telling me I've been diabetic for 17 years and I never took insulin. So there's no other explanation except for God had his hand over my life the whole time. That's a miracle within itself. So I call him Jehovah Rapha because he saved me my entire life. I didn't even know I was sick. He had his hand on my life the whole time. There's no way I should have survived 17 years without taking insulin, being diabetic. And by the time I was discovered being diabetic, I had the highest insulin ever recorded at Boca Medical Hospital, with it well over 1,500, approaching 2,000. I should have been dead. I should have been in a diabetic coma, according to the doctor. The doctor's reaction, I believe he was non-Christian. He said, "Son, you're a living miracle. I don't even understand how you're talking to me right now." So this is why I call Jesus Jehovah Rapha. That's not the only thing in my life. Because my blood sugar was so high, I was constantly going to the bathroom because my body figured out a way to save me by withdrawing all the sugar in my body through my kidneys. Kidneys are not meant to work this way. But my body changed function in order to save my life. Because my blood sugar was so high, my body had to figure out a way to get rid of the sugar. So I produced insulin in my pancreas, but it wouldn't work. So all my body's sugar was being filtered out through my kidneys, which overworked them. And I suffered kidney failure. In kidney failure, most people remain on dialysis for a lifetime until they get their kidney. For me, with prayer, 3 days after I was placed on the transplant list, a matter of fact, it was actually 4 days, I received a kidney. Now, any medical professional will tell you that most people die waiting for a kidney on dialysis. I've known family members in my own family who have died on dialysis and never got their kidney because there's a bunch of red tape involved with getting a kidney. I got mine in 4 days after being placed on the transplant list. That's a certified miracle. This is why I call Jesus Jehovah Rapha, because he's had his hand on my life since I was born. A 10-pound baby boy with diabetes and didn't know it. All the way through getting a kidney in a miracle amount of time. 3 days after being placed on the transplant list. See, I call Jesus Jehovah Rapha because he's my healer. That's how I see him. One of the most favorite names for Jesus, it's not even really a name. It's actually an unfinished sentence. I am. This is actually a multifaceted name for Jesus because it allows you to fill in the blank. I am your healer, your provider, your strength. You fill in the blank, no matter what it is. He's saying, I am everything that you need. I'm your help, your present help in your time of need. That's what I am is. It's everything. It can go on forever. But I call him Jehovah Rapha because he's my healer. But my favorite is I am, because that means he provides everything that you need. You fill in the blank. What do you call Jesus? What has he done for you? In the comments, just put what you call Jesus. Out of all the 50 names listed in the Bible, there's over 50 names. Which one do you call him and why? And that would be inspiring if other people read